All right. So thank you for having us today. I'd like to thank you for your support. Obviously, the news recently with our Big 12 conference alignment was a big deal for us. And I can say this with certainty that we would not be in this position without the support of our students. Um, the 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 decision, what probably about 10 years ago, with the construction of the stadium and the passing of the student referendum, put us in a very favorable position as we were working through this process through conference alignment. And what it showed was principally with the construction of the facilities through the student referendum and the support of that gave us the ability to be in the position to have the conversations we have had over the last years. And then as it came to fruition, about 2 months ago with our acceptance of the Big 12, that, the news is out, obviously, that we're going to the Big 12. We're working through right now when exactly that'll happen. So hopefully sooner than later, we'll have that information of what our initial start year is, whether it's 23 or 24. Those are things that we're working through with the American and the Big 12. But it's not a small thing that's happened for us. When I say it affects every aspect of our business, it truly will for us within intercollegiate athletics, and the corresponding opportunities that it'll provide for the rest of the campus are significant. We're working through exactly benchmarking what those opportunities are. It's things that we've previously worked on, but as we continue to realize what our quickly changing landscape is in our space, what those opportunities will continue to be for us in athletics and how we can help support the university as a whole. I just truly, as I'm a former student athlete here at the University of Houston, I thank you all, because we wouldn't have had this opportunity without your support. And it's incredibly gratifying. It means a lot when you look over and the last couple of home games we've had, our students' ticket allotment, the 5,000 tickets, have been gone by the end of business on Thursday 2 weeks ago, into business on Friday this last week. And then we turn around and we always release extra student tickets to make sure that we're not turning anybody away, particularly when we have inventory available. And that's just honestly as much as we can to continue to integrate students into the game day experience, because students that have the opportunity to be part of that, that experience as an undergrad, those are the students as alums that continue to come back and participate and be part of our campus community as we all continue to mature in life. And any way we can connect and create that fabric or that bind back to the university while an undergrad is something that if we've done that, then we've succeeded. So with you, we've been able to do that, I think, in a meaningful way, and continue to look forward to making that happen. I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation, but I apologize for rambling a bit, but I wanted to thank you all for your support in that sense. All right. I don't know if you guys can read this, but we'll make sure you get a copy of it. This is our mission statement and our goals. I'll read these kind of quickly, and then you'll see where we're going with this. Our mission statement is to build champions for life, and you'll see what we mean by that here in a few slides, as we address academic and social issues as well as athletics. Trying to do everything we can to provide holistic environment for our student athletes while they have their time here as students. The next is to be the best, and that sounds pretty corny, but it truly is our mindset, is to do everything to the best that we can be and continue to develop young people and our coaches and our staff during their time here, so we can leave a positive, lasting impression. Focus is on our student athlete success. Again, that's in every aspect. Particularly last year, over the last year and a half, 2 years that we've been working through COVID, social issues, that's meant a lot more to us in a lot of different ways. Dewana will touch on that a little bit further in our presentation, but the support services that we're trying to bundle around our student athletes as they deal with mental health issues, societal issues, and the support that we attempt to give them from our department, from our coaches, from our staff, and just in general from the university to help navigate, what has been a very volatile period in all of our lives. Our goals, and I'm losing my eyesight, but bear with me. Academic success, obviously, is first and foremost for everything we do. Student athlete development, that means a lot of different things. As I just alluded to, conference positioning, which I think we'll be able to, as we're going through the university strategic plan, I think we're going to be able to check that box with great certainty. Football and men's basketball success. And we carve those out because the financial drivers for our department are expressly tied to the success of our football and basketball programs. And we'll get to that a little bit further here as well. Revenue generation and fan engagement. Again, this is where COVID hit us significantly, was in our revenue generation opportunities and doing non-traditional revenue opportunities. And what I mean by that is bringing special events into our buildings. We were having a lot of success with XFL until the pandemic hit and that league had to shut down. We've also been working to bring special events back to the Fertitta Center and into campus as a whole to help contribute to the campus community. For my mindset, it's always been, and our mindset has always been, the more events, concerts, things like that that we can program into the athletic space to create that community for our campus, for our kids that live on campus, so those that want to stay and stick around after classes are over. We've done professional bull riding, and in Fertitta Center, if you didn't know, we actually put truckloads of dirt in there and had livestock running around. We've done concerts in there. We also have done the Globetrotters. We were actually on pace to really start picking up that line of business, and then the pandemic hit. That's starting to come back. I think it'll probably be Q2, Q3 before we start seeing meaningful engagement back into that space. But again, if without those facilities, we would not have the opportunity to host those types of events. And again, we're thankful for the support that you've given us. Sorry, I can't read the facility enhancements, which we've touched on. And then probably as important as anything is transparency and integrity. You know, we live on the other side of Cullen. Athletics in general within the industry and higher education is always viewed as, you know, an entity that lives outside the university or isn't fully integrated into the university. All of the direct reports at my level in my department, everybody you see here at the table, plus some others that aren't here with us today, all also have dotted lines back to a VP back on campus. And so the intent is that they always have a conduit to express concern or raise issues that if they don't feel like they're getting proper attention from me, they have the ability to do that, from compliance to financial issues to Title IX issues to just general health and well-being of our department. And it feels like that has been successful for us, but it only comes with constant effort and mindset, and that's something that we strive to do. Next slide here. All right, I apologize again. I don't know if you can read this too well, but this is the U of H strategic goals and then the Division of Student Affairs strategic initiatives. And what we've tried to do is align athletics goals to be in line and consistent with the university goals and initiatives. And it probably starts with the very first one for the University of Houston campus, which is the national competitiveness and then student success. Those are two things that we take very seriously. We're always judged by what our peers are doing. And so we have our current peers, and then we have aspirational peers, athletically, academically, and then how can we use athletics as we work to bridge the gap for the university, particularly with conference alignment again. Who do we want to be and who are we trying to be like? And that plays a big role as we work through this. And fortunately for us, the university has continued to grow significantly as an institution educationally and put us in very favorable footing compared to others that were trying to make the same leap in class, going from what is called the G5 to the P5. And through the success of the academics of the university, the research dollars that are being spent, and the general growth of the university as a whole really put us in favorable light as we were working through the expansion process and gave us the ability to be pulled up. So again, we're very excited and thankful to the university's effort on that behalf. Let's see here, next slide. So I thought it'd be kind of cool if it's all right. Some of this mirrors a presentation we gave to the Board of Regents about 2 months ago, but I thought it was useful because it kind of gives you an idea of who our student athletes are. And again, you'll get this in hard copy because it can kind of be kind of small. We have 430 student athletes. as you can see, the vast majority of them are underclassmen. There's a bit of an anomaly there because during the pandemic, the NCAA gave everybody what was called a COVID year. That year of competition didn't count. So if you wanted to, you can continue your eligibility or reset your class. So what you see now is you've got basically 30% of our student athlete population are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. The next 20% are sophomores. And then the balance, basically 50%, I guess, would be 114 juniors and 93 seniors. What's really cool is that between the 430 student athletes that we have, that goes across 54 different majors. So, athletes generally tend to get, painted with a broad brush that we're in, everybody wants to be a coach or, is looking for ways to stay in the athletic arena. We have a lot of really high performing student athletes academically that are looking for a lot of majors that are in the STEM categories. And those are the kids that, you meet them in the hallway and you have a conversation with them. And I leave asking more questions because they're just so overwhelmingly impressive and how they got to that point in their life. And I couldn't figure out how to get to that point in my life. Now I'm trying to lean on them to be my own counselor, but it's a lot of fun. And we've got some great young student athletes that are part of our department and represent our university. This is where all of our kids come from. And I say kids, I apologize, because when I look at you, I think as I expressed earlier, my children at home are about the same age as y'all. So please, if I say that, I'm not trying to be derogatory or demeaning in any way. It's just y'all are all my kids. So I think we all look at it that way because we're all in the same boat. But our student athletes come from 33 different states. The vast majority are from Texas, 65%. But we do have student athletes that come from 38 different countries. And those are listed on the far right, and everywhere from Argentina to Australia, all the way down to Sweden and the U.S. Virgin Islands. What's kind of cool about this, particularly coming out of an Olympic year, a lot of our international student athletes typically are in golf, tennis, track and field, a lot of our Olympic sports. And so I want to say we had 8 or 12 Olympians this last year. And it's interesting because the Olympics were delayed a year. The cycle for Olympics now between World Cup and international competitions will basically be every year for the next 4 years. And that number for us is going to rise a lot, particularly with the success of our track and field program with Leroy and Carl. They get a lot of visibility and have a lot of success. And with the success they have, it gets more success and a lot of international profile. A lot of our golfers and tennis players are almost exclusively from Europe. It's pretty cool to see a tennis team of 10 student athletes, and they're literally all from Europe and speaking different languages and how they interact. And then as they work through COVID and the pandemic and being spread out all over the place, how Zoom brought everybody together and how they're able to continue that when they're away from the university. There are, positives that have come out of this is the connectivity that everybody has and the way they're able to do that using technology and how we can connect with them through the course of summer, where typically student athletes go away and are trying to break away from us. Now there's a constant kind of feedback that we're able to get and share with each other. So we have a group within athletics that helps us navigate and steer issues within the athletic department. And these are the student athletes that help us do this. This is our student athlete advisory board. It's made up of members from each team delegates members. Anywhere from 2 to 3 members from each team are part of the student athlete advisory board. They represent the coaches of the teams and the administration. And this is a group that's very active in learning and leading and community engagement. And so the point of this slide is to show the student athletes to help support us, but that have constant communication with us about the challenges that we're working through, but are also the leaders as we're working for community outreach and to help represent the university outside of athletics, but in other ways. Really, these are the kids that are our future leaders in many aspects, and we lean on them heavily because they're really, really sharp and heavily engaged and really committed to what the mission of the university is as a whole. I'm going to pass this over to Dewana now. She's going to talk about Cougs All In, which is part of our diversity and inclusion effort.
Hello. So just as Chris showed you on that map, that was the start of us talking about diversity and inclusion because we have so many student athletes from all over. So that was the beginning. Our mission is to cultivate and foster and promote a diverse and inclusive culture. We started this in February of 2020. It's a mixture of student athletes and staff, and we work collaboratively to come up with initiatives to make sure that we're addressing these. Our number one goal is embracing differences, and you can see that throughout our PowerPoint up here. So that's what it's all about. So we talk about, let's switch to the next one. Let's talk about some of those initiatives that we're doing. We talk about annual diversity and inclusion trainings. We just completed a training with the American Conference where we met bi-weekly and talked about creating community, creating trust, unconscious bias. Those are the type of things that we talk about when we're working through these initiatives. We like to empower our student athletes. We want them to be agents for change on campus. And so we continue to meet. We have a meeting coming up this Friday to continue to talk about initiatives and how we continue to drive this message forward. We flip over to the next page. That was a part of our student athletes leading. They wanted to do a unity march. They worked with several student groups on campus with Darnell's group. And it was a great turnout. We had Sheila Jackson Lee spoke, and like I said, several of our student athletes. I think you see Chris there in the middle. So we all put on our black and we march with our student athletes. We're here for them, and we let them lead, and there's times that we need to follow. And not just those initiatives, we like to give back. Community service, we talk about community service, we talk about mental health services. All of those are included when we have our discussions. This is a picture of our student athletes working out at TDECU Stadium for the Houston Food Bank, where they gave to those families during the pandemic that didn't have. So, next. Oh,
Thanks. One of the things that, as we work through social justice, social awareness, is I would fail, or we would fail, if this became a one-hit wonder and it was something we're only focused on for 3 months, 6 months. What we've talked about is this is be a constant present effort. And so what I don't want to look up is and have somebody come question me about what are you doing in 6 months or 6 years. This has to be something that is obviously always present. And our student athletes and Dewana have done a great job with our staff of leading that. And really proud of what our kids have done and what our staff's done. You know, these food bank drives up until about a month ago, and when school started again, they were doing these once a month over at TDECU and donating food back to different centers where we were sending it. And this was totally student led, and then the support came from the staff to help make it happen. And it's a proud moment that we have, because you see moments like that where it doesn't get a lot of publicity, but it does make an impact. And it's representative of what our total student body does. There's so much that gets done behind the scenes that is so impactful, and something we're really, really proud of. All right, we're going to get to this is as proud as we are of our athletic success, the academic success that we've had this last year and a half, 2 years, is greater than athletic success. And that when I get to athletic stuff, this will say a lot, because you'll understand where we're coming from. So it feels dated, but it's really not. This is last year. We had 93 seniors, 73 of them graduated on time. The ones that didn't were either impacted by COVID or left early to go pro, which is pretty remarkable. So we're clipping along at 75-ish%. And really it's greater than, it'll be close to 100% by the time the kids that took the COVID year graduated because they stretched it out a little bit, or the kids that left to go pro come back and complete their degrees. This is a lot of information, and I apologize it's so small. Again, we'll make sure you get a hard copy of this, but I'll summarize it here with a couple bullet points. All 17, we sponsor 17 sports in intercollegiate athletics. All 17 of our sports in the fall and spring semester were all above a 3.0. It's only the third time in school history that had been achieved. Our cumulative GPA for all of our 430 student athletes last fall was a 3.43, and last spring was a 3.4. Our women's soccer and golf programs tied for the highest team GPAs last year with a 3.71, and on the men's side, it was a 3.66. Out of our 430 student athletes, 114 of them made the dean's list this last spring. So you guys know a lot more about that than I do because I never made it, but we're very, very proud of them. I mean, I think that's a 3.4 or 3.5 in your core or in your discipline that you're maintaining to get on the dean's list. So, I mean, to have over 25% of our student athletes make that is something that we're proud of, to say the least. Out of our 430 student athletes, 271 of them made the conference honor roll. The conference honor roll is a little bit lower bar than the dean's list. It's a 3.0, but you have to have actively competed in that sport that year. So over 50% of our student athletes made the dean's list for the American Athletic Conference, which is we set a record for the university and also for the conference as far as highest percentage of student athletes that made it by its institution. And here we go to athletic success, and I won't bore you with this, guys, too much, but this is kind of fun. So since we joined the American Athletic Conference, we've won 4 or more conference titles every year within the American Athletic Conference, which is more than anybody else has done. We've done it for 6 straight years, and there's no reason why we expect that to change this year. So we're having success developmentally and socially with our student athletes, academically, and also athletically. This is kind of a cool slide also. With 2010 was the formation of the BCS CFP, right? 2014. So since that's the college football playoff. So since that happened, we're one of 10 teams that's been able to play in a New Year's Day 6 bowl game, but also make a Final Four. And when you look at the list of schools that share that achievement with us, it's not many. I mean, you're looking at Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, North Carolina. I mean, that's a pretty heady list of people that we're associated with our athletic success. And again, we expect to continue that and build on that, especially with some of the things that are happening to us with conference alignment. This last year, obviously, was the high water mark for our basketball team making the Final Four. There's a lot of details in there about what they were able to achieve. Obviously, went to the Final Four. Our overall record was 28-4. There were a couple games in there that were canceled due to COVID, so we expect that win total was probably going to be higher. But we finished number 3 in the country last year at the end of the season, and we're preseason number 15, I think, starting. And basketball season starts here in about 2 weeks, so hopefully we'll continue on that trajectory. Equally successful is our women's swimming and diving program. For this 5th straight year, they won conference championship, and we finished 30th in the NCAAs. Tanika Jameson is our new women's swimming and diving coach. Ryan Wakamerka, who was our head coach, left and went to Auburn. It's where he went to school and swam. Understandably so, he wanted to go home, so he moved on. He left us better than he found it, so we're thankful to him. But we hired a wonderful coach in Tanika, and she came from Texas A&M. She had her first meets this last weekend and did very well, so we're really excited about having her here in the future of our swimming and diving program under her leadership. Next program's men's golf continues to be a program for us that has high levels of success. They made their 21st postseason tournament in the history of the school, which is, again, pretty rare air, and the 7th under our current head coach, Jonathan Dismuke. Pardon me, I went too far. Next program is our newest program, women's golf. We started that 6 years ago. Pardon me. Lost pages here. Bear with me. Get back on track. There we go. Pardon me. They started 7 years ago because it was our 7th consecutive NCAA tournament appearance. Also, that program has had a lot of success. The coach that founded that program with us, Jared Chadwell, left and went to Texas A&M for a similar position. Again, he started the program, left it better than he found it, and we promoted the assistant coach, Lydia Glum. But this is a program that's consistently top 25, has a chance to compete for a high ranking at the end of the year. And what you're going to start seeing it's a younger program, but those athletes are now getting into the pros and starting to have success. So we'll start seeing some young women that come out of that program that go on to have professional golf careers, and we'll get some extra visibility out of them and have them come back and be around us, which is a lot of fun. Track and field, it continues to be our bell cow. They win everything all the time. For this 5th straight year, we did not host indoor track and field championships last year because of COVID, but for the 5th year, the men won the team title in the American Athletic Conference. The women won their title. Our coaching staff for the 5th year in a row was coaches of the year. And so a track and field program, men and women, have about 120 student athletes. We sent 33 of them to compete in postseason NCAA tournament or NCAA postseason competition. Let me keep going here. We're getting close, I promise. This is a list of accomplishments, individual accomplishments of our student athletes this last year. We had 7 of our student athletes were the conference players of the year for their respective sports. Quentin Grimes with men's basketball, Karen Fredgregard with women's golf. Swimming's a little weird because they have different events or different disciplines, so we had multiples there. With Mackenzie Leahy with swimming and diving, Iona Sasha with swimming and diving, Peyton Condis with swimming and diving, Sean Mesagwani, who is a men's track and field athlete who competed in the Olympics, and Brianne Bethel, who also competed in the Olympics as well with women's track and field. All of them were their sports athlete of the year in the American Athletic Conference last year. The next slide is we had 88 students that received all conference honors this last year. And it was a pretty successful year for us athletically, socially, and academically. Now I'm going to turn it over to Monty, and he's going to get into the finances, which is probably the reason we're mostly here. And hopefully we didn't put you all to sleep too much.
One more slide. Perfect. Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Chris may find that boring. I personally don't get tired of seeing kids do good things. And I think he's done a great job of, not bored, did a great job of pointing out that in a way that kids can be successful, our kids are doing it right? Socially, academically, and athletically, right? And if you get it in that order, you're going to, the last thing's going to happen. If you do academics right, you do social right, winning will happen, right? You build good person, good results. So it's not boring. I think it's exciting and good results. And that leads to what we're talking about. This slide, quite frankly, in a nutshell, is the American Athletic Conference and the great amount of support that you give us. Where does that stack up versus our competitors in the American? And this slide represents that. So as a percentage of total revenues, student fees, UH remains among the lowest in terms of what student support in the league. That's not to be here to ask for more. It's when we get to the end, we're going to ask for, what you've been supporting us with. The point I'm trying to make is the dollars you invest in us were a good investment for the success that is being delivered and the representation we provide the university. So the devil is in the details on those, but you can see we all in $8.7 million from y'all comes in 2 different buckets. You know that. That's 13% of our overall $67 million, which is, second lowest in the American. So moving on to the next slide, we try to break this down. You have to do a little bit of, sorry, I clicked it here and didn't go there. You base it on like 24 credit hours per, falls 12 for 24. That's what this is done on. You see that when you break it down that way, Houston has the lowest per credit hour fee amongst American schools. Again, it feels good to us to deliver a really high successful program on behalf of the students at what is I think a great value for the students here at You Sure Can.
I just want to, one thing that you see is these are the public schools that we have information for. The private schools, SMU, Tulane, and Temple, don't provide that information. So if that's why the numbers of schools that are represented are a little bit lower.
Probably should have put that in up front, but that is one of the caveats. We don't have access to private school information. So this is publicly available in a number of places. And again, picking up, we feel like we deliver a really high quality product and a good value here back to UH. This one is one that we put in because frequently it does get asked about. We have the ability to self-generate revenues. That's stuff you can do to raise money for yourselves. Our 3 biggest buckets on those are royalty, sponsorships, ticket sales, and donations. And to be honest with you, you know, when you look at 18, 19, and then I guess 19, 20 didn't update it. So the far right is not, is the header for 19, 20. And the reality of that is, if you, the bullets on the right, sponsorships are down, donations are down. Why? Well, we're starting to see in that year, the back end of the 2020 fiscal year is the COVID pandemic, right? So from a sponsorships perspective, you had folks who may have even had all their sponsorship assets fulfilled, but cash flow for them dried up, and so they weren't able to fulfill their payments to us. So they, weren't dropped from the program, put on a hiatus. Some of those monies we've been able to get back, but not all of it, right? And so that's going to be a trend that carries through, and we come here and sit for the students next year. It's going to be a trend you see again for fiscal year 21 that we just closed, right? Our ability to self-generate revenues has been down at the end of 1920, all of 2021, and we're evaluating now to understand for the year we're in now, how much can we recoup and come back? And to be honest, we're still seeing some level of buyer behavior that shows hesitation, right? And so we're not quite sure where our numbers will finish, but the point of this slide is to monitor. We understand this is really important, and that everybody expects us to generate as much self-generated revenue as we can. We work hard at it. We don't go a single day, a single hour of any day without talking about how can we do better? What can we do? How do we do more with less? How do we drive more? And these are the three biggest buckets. But to, you have to, put it in context, and you have to be honest about the impacts of COVID-19. It's not poor me, like it's the world over. It's billions and billions. It happened to all of us. It's just that we're counted on so heavily to drive our own revenues that it's a story that has to be told. We're mindful of it. We feel like we're coming back around the corner, and we'll be able to improve upon these categories. And as Chris spoke to, our opportunity to join the Big 12 here in 2 or 3 years, hopefully sizably changes that lens, right? I mean, what's been referred to is Houston doesn't have a fan problem. In the past, Houston has maybe had an opponent issue. Like, it's hard to drive people to get excited about certain opponents. So we hope to be able to improve upon that. But did want to call attention to this slide. This is a real world condition of what wasn't there, right? And wasn't there this whole last year. So pass now on the finances and get it back over to Chris. All right, what slide is next? Oh, that's my version. Okay,
Yeah,
what do you have?
I don't have that.
So Spirit of Houston.
Yeah.
Spirit of Houston. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize. So
we had to switch versions.
Yeah. Apologize. So one of the questions we got 2 years ago was, what did we do to help support back for student organizations, particularly Spirit and the band? And so there's a lot of things that we've tried to work with Dr. Burtman and that crew to support those efforts, and everything from helping get them to, or supporting away events. What else am I missing? And it was postseason, particularly with the, we had an issue. We couldn't do it last year during the NCAA tournament because of COVID issues that the NCAA admitted or imposed. We weren't able to bring the band with us to the tournament, which was disappointing. But we did have a small group that we were able to get to the Final Four, right, Tag? They weren't able to perform in the venue, but they were able to be there. So those were things that we're able to do. And as we became bowl eligible this last weekend with football, certainly we hope to enhance with some more wins, the stature of the bowl game we're in, and continue to provide a great experience for band and Spirit to be with us as we prepare for the postseason. I think that's the bulk of our presentation. We had one other slide that I can get into. I'll just show this with you. Apologize. Name, image, and likeness. You've heard a lot. There's been a change a year ago where this last summer, where student athletes can now monetize their name, image, and likeness. We partnered with the Bauer College to create a program called Liftoff. So some of our student athletes that maybe couldn't get into Bauer, which is a pretty competitive program to get into, there are electives that they're able to take within that. So we worked with the Bauer program to create an NIL program that was bundled around personal finance, personal branding, and what was the other course tag? Sales and entrepreneurship. So they can take those as undergrad courses, get exposure into the Bauer program, and still come out of there with a sales certificate that makes you, as you know, basically 100% employable with that sales certificate when you leave. We've had some student athletes that have already taken advantage of it, and we're seeing great success, and we're very, very proud of it. Dean Pavlo over there has been an incredible partner. what I want to highlight with that is that to me is probably one of the better collaborations that we've had to be able to reach across campus and find ways to assist each other. It gives them profile that they maybe couldn't get otherwise, and it gets us the ability to have exposure for our student athletes into a highly competitive business program that may open up some of our kids' eyes on different ways of the career paths that they want to choose when they complete their eligibility. So that was it for our presentation. Questions?
The one, I had two questions. I guess I was kind of thinking as you were presenting. So I think who was it that mentioned the opponent issue? It was a fan issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to get at, because obviously I've moved to the Big 12. The opponents that I'll be facing are much greater. They're usually all ranked, even with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. So what I wanted to kind of get at is, how do you think, or what steps are you taking to kind of get the UH fan base in terms of like marketing for all sports, regardless of football, basketball? How are you going to get them to the same levels as, let's say, like Baylor or some of the programs that are nationally ranked in almost every single thing?
No, we're meeting on that Wednesday. It literally. So one of the things that had come up internally was, do you push to try to join sooner or later? And to be quite frank with you, we took the intermediate path because we need more time to get ready for that transition. And that means a lot of different things. It goes back to recruiting the caliber student athletes that can compete every game at that level. It's one thing to get up for a game and then the next game it kind of troughs out. But to your point, men's basketball, you're going to go Tech, Kansas, Baylor, could be 3 consecutive games, and they're all top 15 teams. So how do we continue to build in a roster that can compete at that level? That's what we're focused on. And that's, frankly, we're just getting into all that. There's a lot that goes into that, from resources for travel, the way we travel, the way we do business operationally. Facility wise, we're in good shape. That's one advantage that we have. We've got some more things that we need to do that we're working on, but they're not competitive facilities. These are more operational facilities. And so I guess the best way for me to answer this is we're working on exactly what that means, because it does mean quite a bit, because you're exactly right. The bar has been raised, and I can assure you from our board and to our university administration, they like to win, and we need to make sure we figure out a way to continue that.
And the second thing that I was going to get at, so I know, for example, like A&M, Texas, they all require their students. So like if you want, let's say, season tickets, or if you want tickets to a football game, usually they end up paying for that.
Yes.
And that's one of the big advantages, I think, at least as a student at UH, is that you can go to all these games for free. Obviously if you come in time and everything like that. So if you could just, and you might not be able to, because like you said, you haven't really talked about this. But what steps are you all going to take to ensure that the students aren't going to get left out as you move on to a bigger, bigger stage on the world, and you have all this funding and all these opportunities? How are you going to keep the normal student engaged and kind of keep true to what we've been?
Well, that's a very fair and good question. It's something that we're mindful of. It's what we touched on earlier. Our future for we're a young school. Our demographic is still young. We're aging into our alumni base. And so we have to continue to do that. And by doing that, athletics provides a vehicle by getting exposure to those other connectivity components of being engaged with the university, even though you're not going to school there anymore. What ties me back to it? We have an agreement in place with you guys. We're not pulling back on that agreement. The 5,000 tickets to the basketball game, 1,000 tickets to 5,000 for football, 1,000 for basketball. And Tad can talk about that in a second if we need to, but we do everything we can to make sure we never turn a student away. If a ticket hasn't been sold and it's available and we have a student that wants to come, and even if we've exceeded those 5,000 or 1,000, we make sure the student gets in. And that mindset won't change. It's foundational to where we're going. And if we phase out or we restrict the students now, it would only hurt us later. And so there's no intention in any way to pull back. In reality, what we're trying to figure out is ways to double down, because that's the group that, like, for this weekend's game, we got a huge game on Saturday. The first thing we did today was come out and start engaging the students over here at the University Center to get them excited for Saturday. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I can tell you that we're not going back. We're going the other way. We're trying to figure out ways to get more engaged.
That was an excellent job. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Just
Thanks.
to complicate it a little bit, so what are the peer institutions you talked about, who you want to aspire to be? So the teams in the Big 12, other big schools that I think we're on par. We can probably exceed as well. Is it commonplace for free tickets for students? Does that have, and I love it, by the way, I'm just curious, is it a different mindset? Sometimes when things are free, people don't engage, because I've seen it at other campuses that I've been on, students are lined up day one. It's like this energy, I'm going to buy my season pass. They drive students to be there. When it's free, sometimes, I might go to the game, I may not. I guess with success and winning, it's different, but have you all kind of talked and thought through that as well, just the benefit of it being free and then the benefit of charging just for that?
Yeah.
Kind of driving people out because we're in a different, it's a different level, the Big 12.
Well, there's a couple components that factor into that. One is the funding of our facilities tie back to the student referendum, and that's big for a while, at least in their 10 years, right? Further out, it might be further out. But you bring up a good point. Free ticket versus somebody that opts in to pay for it. The person that opts in to pay for it is a lot more likely to show up. But we have to create a value proposition where it's the place to be for our students. You know, this last weekend, unfortunately, before it started raining, the tailgate outside for homecoming was packed. I mean, it was festive. It's what you expect it to be, or we all want it to be on game day. What we have to figure out a way is, what I foresee happening and what we've guarded against, what we originally had issues with, were kids that were taking their free tickets and selling them. And so trying to figure out ways to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, TAG worked really hard with the student government and also with our ticketing staff to not make it, we're trying to make it simple, but not onerous to be able to get to a game. And so trying to find that balance. I really, I don't know that it'll change anytime soon because of the commitment that we have to y'all and what you guys do to support us. So we have to figure out other ways to make it the spot to be for events. And we've tried different things that have worked, like we put DJs in the student section for there to be different music there, food giveaways. Some things carry more weight than others. Does a t-shirt make a difference? I don't know, sometimes. But I got to tell you, the crazy part was when we did Cage Rage, which was the student event to start the year during Weeks of Welcome, the line was wrapped around the stadium to get in. We had never seen anything like that. I mean, how many kids were there, Tag?
It was a good 2,000 kids outside the door, literally an hour before the gates were open.
Waiting to get in for a pep rally. And so we couldn't tell if that was the excitement because everybody was back on campus, they could be around each other again, or there was excitement for the new seasons. To me, it felt like it was more a chance for everybody to be around each other and to, enjoy being social. But certainly we're starting to see it this last weekend, and we have absolutely seen it every game for basketball, because that is the environment for us. The energy for our athletes comes from the student section. And so it's real. And so that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we create and maintain those connections. So I don't know that I answered your question very well.
You did.
Okay.
You talked about the long-term commitment.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And this is more of just it's just a question I had just regarding like athletics in general. So I know most institutions, in terms of profit loss, the two that make money are usually football and then basketball. So is that the same at UH, or are there other athletic programs that are making money and producing?
It's predominantly football and basketball. I think that particularly with where we're going, the Big 12, I think baseball has a chance to maybe break even. They lose money. Baseball does an incredible job raising money, and they help cover a lot of costs. But the next sport that you see in the collegiate space that seems to do well, particularly in the southeast portion of the country, is baseball. What am I missing? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, I mean, it's commonsensical, right, in this. I mean, football and basketball are the traditional revenue drivers in college athletics. Football versus basketball, it's economies of scale, right? I mean, football stadium is 40,000, 50,000, 80,000, depending on what stadium you're at, 100,000. And in our case, you know, when you speak about basketball, and I mean this in a good way, Fertitta Center's only 7,000 seats. Well, gee, why isn't it 17,000? Well, because there's energy in the 7,000, and that's a really good size, right? And to your point, Donnell, about how do we create energy and drive it and make it want to be the place to be, part of, driving demand, right, is manipulating supply. So having a smaller venue for us does well for us. But to Chris's point, beyond that, baseball's got a chance to do some revenue driver, particularly to your point about when I was mentioning opponents. That same thing that you applied to basketball in your head is going to apply baseball-wise too. Like the Big 12 in baseball is a highly, highly competitive league with a lot of nationally ranked teams. And so there's a chance there maybe, but he's right. It's football, it's basketball, it's baseball. And Donnell, what I would say to you about how do we be mindful of that? It's like, do you want to win the battle? Or do you want to win the war? And, I try to think about 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years from now when these two students are thinking about UH. And if we've done a great job while they're here, then we've got a great job later for them to be supportive of the institution, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And I do think we start to solve that problem by, with the quality of the league that we're in, the quality of the opponents that will be here night in and night out are going to be games that students want to see.
General rule of thumb, just financially within college athletics, one football game equals an entire basketball season typically in revenue. When you get to a point where opponents matter, you know what I mean? So that's the scalability of it. And that's why when you see people invest so heavily in football and basketball is because it gives you a chance to become a lot more financially responsible to the institution. Obviously, we get a lot of support from the institution, and with the move to the Big 12, that'll give us a chance to start tapering back on the level of support that we receive to not immediately, but over time, hopefully get to a point where we're a lot more self-sufficient.
And then those profits usually.
Just want to get about 1 minute.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I talked a long time.
No, you're fine. It's
Yeah.
my bad. I asked you.
You're all right.
So those profits are then covering. Do they go back into the budget and then cover the losses on some of the other athletics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just a place where I came from, I mean, we lost, don't get mad at me, but we lost like $3.7 million a year on women's basketball. And that was not here, that was somewhere else. But that's, unfortunately, there's sports that make money and then there's sports that are loss leaders. Now, that's not everywhere. There's some places that, maybe they're super invested in that, but the general rule is kind of what I showed you. Football equals the vast majority. When we negotiate our television contracts, football represents between 80 and 90% of that value. So anything else question-wise? All right.
I did have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, on the revenue slide, you did mention that due to COVID, the donations have gone down. What were the implications of that in terms of your, the athletics in general? Was there anything that you had to sort of reel back on?
Yes.
Were there any, if you could expand a little bit on the initiatives?
Sure.
I mean, first, let me say the university's administration, understood, got it, was happening to all of us, right? And so from the chancellor on down, very, very supportive in terms of our ability to explain to them, here's how this impacts us, right? And so you do scenario A, scenario B. Fortunately, unfortunately, we kind of hit right in the middle of what that range was. You would have liked to have had it be less impactful, but yeah, we absolutely made adjustments. If you're not going to be bringing in as much revenue, you need to try to do everything you can do on the expense side, right, to safeguard against that. And we were able to do that in really athletics expenditures, get into 4 buckets, right? Salaries, operating dollars, scholarships, and debt retirement. Well, reverse order. Debt retirement, it's fixed. You got to pay the bill. So that's not going anywhere, right? Scholarships are a commitment we make to the student. Once we make the commitment, we're going to honor that. So that too is fixed, right? So now I'm left with salaries and operations, right? And so between those two, we're able to pull back versus the FY21 budget. The numbers in the questionnaire, but a little bit more than $4 million in saved expenses, which the university obviously is appreciative of, because every dollar saved is a dollar we've got to help toward the university's bottom line. So yeah, we did pull back and do all we could do to not spend dollars where they didn't absolutely need to be spent. And some of that was baked, right? If you don't have a home game, you don't have the expenses associated with hosting that game, right? So those sorts of things were natural. It wasn't mind-boggling science or math or finance that we did there.
Real quick, and I know we're up against it, like recruiting got suspended for the last year. So that allowed us to save a lot of money on travel. The one thing that we tried to protect was student services. And the other areas that we pulled back on were sports operating budgets, because a lot of their travel was affected, so that there was a natural savings there. But what we tried to do everything we could to protect the student athlete experience while they're here, everywhere, everything from mental health services to the way nutrition, all those things, we did everything we could to remain consistent, and the savings we were able to find in our operating budget. So it kind of worked for us, where we were able to save money without impacting the programs or the student athletes too adversely. Anything else? Right. I think I'm supposed to say this, so just to make sure I get this right, we respectfully request the full student fee support for FY23. So thank you very much for the time today. Thank you, guys. Y'all ask great questions. I appreciate it. Anything else?
I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks for having us.